Yeah, that title's not rage bait. I genuinely think that Pokemon as a game franchise is absolutely pathetic. And furthermore, I'm going to take it one step further. I think that all of you should feel the same exact way. Pokemon as a game franchise is one of the worst, if not the single worst gaming franchise ever made. Now, I know right off the bat, you may be thinking to yourself that that's a bit harsh and that there are surely other massive franchises out there that are arguably worse than Pokemon. And, sure, we can get into the minutia of that, but at the very least, every other gaming franchise out there at least tries to innovate in between every new installment. Pokemon, however, has remained the same exact game since its inception, I would argue, and if anything, has even gotten worse over the years, taking away more and more features that made the series unique and stand out in the crowd. Now, I don't think I'm alone in thinking that the Pokemon games have been on a downward spiral, at least in the 3D installments as the games have come out. However, I truly do think that Pokemon has always been rather standard in the grand scheme of gaming franchises. I believe Gens 1 through 6, even I'd argue, held a special place in people's hearts because they at least had that heart in them. They had care, they had passion, they tried to do the best with the hardware they had. And they truly did deliver some games that were truly special. I hold Gen 4 dearly in my heart, both Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, and the remakes Heart Gold and Soul Silver. I would argue that Heart Gold and Soul Silver is the crowning jewel of the entire series. And I'd even say that a game like X and Y or Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire were truly good games that had some heart behind them. However, as the series has gone on, it's become very clear that the Pokemon Company has become content with putting in zero effort into their games because they know, regardless of how much effort they put into their games, they will see a massive profit because Pokemon. And that's the biggest thing I immediately want to talk about. I do not blame Game Freak at all for any of Pokemon's downfall. No, in terms of games, I think Game Freak has always been a competent studio. However, I believe that the Pokemon Company puts unrealistic expectations upon Game Freak almost all the time. Games such as Scarlet and Violet were pumped out in almost less than a year. A game of that size, a massive home console RPG that has an open world, brand new region, brand new Pokemon. It is insane that a game of that size, of that standing, be rushed out the door in so little a time. Yet regardless, no matter how unfinished, unplayable, and incompetent of a game that Scarlet and Violet is, it still sold a bajillion copies because, again, Pokemon. Now, I want to stop right here and say, I love Pokemon, much like everyone else in the fucking world, I assume. Especially lately, I've fallen deep down a rabbit hole of the Pokemon trading card game, and especially the mobile game I've lost countless hours to over the past week. It's become an addiction. But it really has gotten me onto that kick of Pokemon again that I felt so strongly when I was a kid. But whereas when I was a kid, the newest games coming out still had a passion and heart and drive behind them, what I met with today is a lot of lacklustered, watered down, empty, corporate feeling, soulless RPGs that do nothing differently. And you may be wondering still, why am I being so harsh on Pokemon? Why am I being so harsh on Pokemon games? Pokemon is the top grossing series of all time. Not just in RPGs, not just in games, of all time. It is Pokemon at number 1, baby, and it's been there for a while. How can a series that has so many resources at its disposal deliver such fucking embarrassments of games? And I know people out there may be wondering, why do I think the modern Pokemon games are so bad? Why do I think something's been lost in the process? There is absolutely no excuse for games such as Sword and Shield, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, Scarlet and Violet, to be in these states that they're in. And I just want to focus on Scarlet and Violet for a minute because, yes, Scarlet and Violet takes a bold new effort with the series. It's a massive open world. It has, again, brand new Pokemon to see. The Pokemon are out in the world doing stuff all the time. There's multiple story events going on. However, the world, apart from, we're not even going to get into the massive technical issues that I know everyone knows about. The game stutters, it loads shit all the time. It doesn't run well. The frame rate is dog shit. I went into it anyway. But the world that the game is fucking on life support trying to load in is empty, barren, with nothing to do in it. Absolutely nothing to see. Sure, there's Pokemon prancing around every now and then, but that's it. It's a massive world, and guess what? You get to run through it and watch it try to fucking load. Is that fun? It's not fun. It's not fun for me. It is pathetic. It is absolutely pathetic the game is in that state. And there's no reason for these games to be rushed out the door. Again, Pokemon is the top grossing series ever. They have more than enough money. There's no rush to get a new game out the door. You can release fucking socks and you'll probably get $1 million. They're fine to just hold these games off a little bit longer and let them cook and make a good game. But guess what? They don't do that. They just ship it out the door and say, fuck it, we'll see what happens. And it always delivers these weaker and weaker games. I would argue going down the list from X and Y, it's only gotten worse. And why am I so mad about this? And why do I think you all should be so mad about this? Is because Pokemon should be the game. It is a series that has massive potential. It spawned an entire new genre of game of monster collecting. And I would argue every single one of Pokemon's contemporaries has massively outdone it at this point. What, Monster Hunter Stories, Dragon Quest Monsters, what else is there? Fucking Persona, Shin Megami Tensei. Almost every single rival that exists out there for Pokemon beats it at its own game. Wholesale, completely outdoes it. And I really think it's about damn time for Pokemon to deliver something back to its community. It hasn't even tried to do better. It delivers the same game over and over and fucking over. And there's one game that I will get into in a little bit. Pokemon Legends Arceus is the first time in the series fucking history they've tried to do something different. And guess what? That's the best Pokemon experience they've ever made in the last 15 years. It's astounding what innovation can do to a series that has been stagnant since its inception. It's insane they have not tried this more. Rather than keep going off about how angry I am at the Pokemon series and how pathetic I think the games are, I'd rather just go into what I think my ideal Pokemon game would be, what I think the series should absolutely do going forward. And right off the bat, I'm going to do Game Freak and Pokemon Company a solid. You can cut the story out. I swear to you, there is nothing worse in the world than an RPG with a poor story. It is egregious to slog through a game that is always massively text heavy and just has nothing to say. It is awful. Thinking right now off the bat, Tales of Zestiria. I thought Tales of Zestiria when it came out. I never had experience with the Tales of series before. I got it. The combat was pretty fun. Everything looked pretty cool. You know, the music was all right. But the story was just awful. I'm sorry if there's any Tales of Zestiria fans out there. It was a slog to get through. And guess what? That ruined my experience of the game. Because RPGs, you know, if you love the combat like me, that's one thing, fine. But let's not kid ourselves. They're mainly story-based. They're vehicles to tell a long story, and if the story is bad, you've just shot out 80% of the game. And right off the bat, I think Pokemon shoots itself in the foot every time by trying to give us some very boring, generic story that always boils down to fight 8 gym leaders and catch some legendaries. That's it. That's the story. There does not need to be so much time spent in Pokemon games on useless story bullshit. If there's a rival and their personality is corporate, they're safe, they're nice, they're kind, they're friendly, they're your rival, don't put them in the game. That's just boring. No one wants to spend 8 hours talking to some dude who's just kissing your ass the whole time and he's going to fight you with a Pokemon that's weak against the type you got. It's stupid, is my point. We don't need it. I think the best experience for a Pokemon game would be dropping a player into a brand new world, a brand new region, and letting them discover it for themselves. Not having their hand held, not having a rival direct them where to go, just sending them out into the open fucking world. Do it a Breath of the Wild style way. I think Breath of the Wild is a great basis to go off of for a Pokemon game. I think releasing a player and, if you had an experience where you find a mountain in the distance and you use your Pokemon to climb up that mountain, and you fight some really strong, monsters and Pokemon up there, and maybe you find a cave and you go down there and maybe you're not strong enough to beat the Pokemon in that cave. So, okay, you go, you level up, you catch some more Pokemon, whatever you do, and then you get to the end of the cave, say, and you encounter a Darkrai randomly, and you're like, oh my God, and maybe you find some little legends here and there. Maybe some people have left behind books or something saying there's a Darkrai here. Maybe just to give the player some guidance. But don't have an entire cutscene and side quest dedicated to it. Takes all the mystique out of finding that legendary. And that's the whole beauty of the Monster Collection genre. Just finding this insane mythical beast for yourself and trying your might against it, and maybe you get to keep it for yourself. If they just told you where to go, it wouldn't be nearly as fun. But the more and more that Pokemon adds these side quests and cutscenes and, just spelling it out for the player, it ruins that sense of exploration and finding a new Pokemon. Second off, I really think it's time we move away from the 8 gym leaders. There's no reason for it. I get in the first region, okay, there's the Pokemon League. You fight the 8 gym leaders and you take on, the Elite Four. But at this point, why does every region need to have 8 gym leaders? It just feels too safe. They're following a formula that I feel really takes away from the potential of what Pokemon could be. And again, I think it would be much stronger if you just dumped someone into a world, had them explore for themselves, and maybe there is some Pokemon League people in there. Maybe they're tied to the official Pokemon League, but the whole structure of 8 gym leaders, having to go to the gym, all having a type, I think we could do some more interesting things. Maybe you have a few really strong members of the Pokemon League. Maybe you have arenas where it's like a more Coliseum kind of based thing, and that's the Pokemon League. It's something different. We don't need to follow this exact structure. And story-wise, I know some people are going to say there should be some story, and I agree, there should be some story, but it should be a more show, not tell kind of experience. The whole allure of these games is going to a new region, seeing new monsters, seeing the way that life works in a world with these mythical creatures. That should be the appeal. It shouldn't be something where you remove that beauty of, mystique and exploration and bog it down with a very generic, bare bones, standard RPG story. I think Pokemon can do great stories, but recently they haven't shown it. Now I want to look at Pokemon Legends Arceus for a bit, because I believe Pokemon Legends Arceus is the closest we've ever gotten to my vision. And I think that what Pokemon Legends Arceus did, you can pull a lot of great ideas that should absolutely be in the series going forward. Right off the bat, Pokemon Legends Arceus kind of had that open world exploration, just finding Pokemon in the wild kind of vibe that I'm talking about. Walking up the mountain near Spill Pillar and just seeing a massive Electivire. That's fun. That's cool. That's exactly what Pokemon should be. That, discovering the unknown and being captivated by what you find out there. Sneaking through a pond and seeing, some Magnemites playing with the Ponyta or some shit. Something cool like that. But more so than that, Pokemon Legends Arceus did something with the combat that I think is truly what Pokemon should do. You already know, RPGs, talking about combat, talking about mechanics. You knew Final Fantasy was going to be mentioned at some point in this video. I mean, that's my whole shtick, bud. Back when Final Fantasy was focused on turn-based combat for each entry, in between games, they didn't just give the exact same battle system. They always innovated and tried something new, whether it was switching from a class change system to the job system, or the ATB system, or the materia system, or the Esper system. They always had something new that was more than a gimmick. It was something unique to that entry that significantly tweaked combat. It didn't remake the wheel, it didn't get rid of that classic turn-based feel, but it added a new layer that was unique to that entry. And what it did is it made every entry feel fresh in terms of mechanics, gameplay, and how you approach the game. And Pokemon in Legends Arceus, when they added the turn move system and agile and strong type moves, it was the first time they added a gameplay mechanic that significantly changed how combat was approached. It didn't completely remove turn-based combat, it just added a new layer to shake up the mix and make it feel unique. And the impact it has on the entire game is massive. It brings in a layer of strategy, a level of pace that you can control in combat. It makes you think, you gotta say, do I do an agile move and get some turns later, or do I try to do a strong move and knock this guy out now? Maybe I do an agile type move first and then do a strong type right after to kill this guy in one turn. It adds something to Legends Arceus that is unique to that game. And it's a lot different than a Z move or a Mega Evolution or a Dynamax that's really just a flavor of the week type Ultra Giga move, that kills someone in one hit. It's more than that. It changes the entire combat system for the better without completely discarding it. And I know a lot of people have yearned to see Pokemon move away from turn-based combat, but I'm actually gonna give Pokemon the benefit of the doubt here. I do think that's an integral, part of the series. I don't know if you can remove the turn-based combat entirely and still have it feel like a Pokemon game. Now, maybe they could try doing an action RPG in the future. I've always had this idea of maybe you send out your Pokemon and then you get to control them. You get to run around a little circle battlefield maybe, and you maybe get to do some very basic moves. Maybe you just get 4 moves like normal, but you get to run around while you do it. I don't know. I think that might be asking for too much, expecting too much, especially from a studio that can't even fucking animate their Pokemon. That might be way too much. So for both of those reasons, I think sticking with a turn-based system for Pokemon is the right move, at least for now. Just add something like the turn move system in each entry that can shake up that combat and make the turn-based combat feel unique, feel original. Don't just give us the same bare bones system that you never take advantage of. And that's the other thing. Pokemon games are designed for kids, but Jesus, are they designed for toddlers, lobotomite zombies? There is no reason to even try to differentiate up your team nowadays because you just steamroll everything. I don't know how you navigate that. Maybe you add a hard mode. I really don't like multiple difficulty settings because I think a game with a fixed difficulty setting is the way to go. But who knows? You're gonna knock out an entire portion of that child audience if you make it Ultra Nightmare mode. So maybe you have a hard mode and an easy mode. Maybe you add in, I don't know, a Nuzlocke mode. Maybe you do something that makes it more engaging. If you're gonna have the same combat system, amp it up so it's more interesting and you really gotta engage with it, or add in a new mechanic such as you did in Legends Arceus that keeps it interesting, that keeps it fresh each new entry, that keeps it on your toes. So to wrap this up, I think the ideal Pokemon game would be a player in a world much like Breath of the Wild, finding new things for themselves, catching Pokemon out in the open, don't have a super handholdy story, You know, just give the player a directive. Maybe there's a Pokemon that's evil and he's terrorizing the world, and you gotta collect a lot of monsters to, you know, hopefully beat him and catch him. And that's as simple as the general outline can be, and everything else you discover organically. And I'm not saying there can't be NPCs. I'm not saying there can't be side quests. Just don't make it such a generic, bogged down RPG story that stops you every 5 minutes to give you text that's just not interesting. Even in Legends Arceus, I don't know why that game was so talky when it had nothing to say. Nothing interesting happened in that game. Combat, just add a new mechanic to shake it up a little bit, and that's it. I really don't think making a good Pokemon game should be that hard. Half the work is done for you. Just make creatures interact in an environment. I think fucking Pokemon Snap did a better job than the mainline games at showing what a Pokemon should be like. Keep the catch mechanics from Legends Arceus, you know, keep that sense of exploration and maybe the multiple Pokemon exploration from Arceus. And who knows, maybe new Pokemon ZA will do just that. Maybe this is a new age of Pokemon and this video will be dated, but you know, other than the actual gameplay mechanics itself, the Pokemon Company has to ease the fuck off of Game Freak. Or, I don't know, take your massive amount of resources and fucking utilize them better. Not saying throw more developers at the problem, because that is never just the problem. A lot of games just need more time to cook. But also, maybe just wait. You have so much money. Why are you rushing these games out the door? I've always thought too, you know, what is the problem with staying in the same generation? Because that's another thing. Every new Pokemon game isn't as simple as making a new game. No, they have to make a brand new region, a brand new set of Pokemon. It's not even just the games. New trading cards have to be made. A new anime series has to be made. New manga has to be made. A lot goes into a new Pokemon game. So what is the problem with maybe extending the lifetime of a generation and just giving us new games? You know, I'd take a Scarlet and Violet 2. I'd take a fucking Scarlet and Violet 2 that runs, that works, that has a world filled with shit, that doesn't pop in and pop out and runs at 2 frames per second like a fucking PowerPoint. You know, I'd take that. But instead, we're going to get a brand new region with a whole new set of problems. And Game Freak's probably going to be crunched to make some shit again. You know, it's not fair. You know, it's not fair to anybody. It's not fair to the developers that have to cram out these games. And it's not fair to the consumers who have to get a boring, bland, unpolished, unfinished mess of a game. I do love Pokemon. I love Pokemon as a series. I've been a massive fan of Pokemon since I was a kid. We all fucking love Pokemon. I don't gotta tell you. But the games, at least for the last 15 years, they've been getting progressively worse and worse. And, you know, you're going to have these white knights that defend the series and the series honor till they die. They'll say Scarlet and Violet's a great game and you don't know what you're talking about. Scarlet and Violet is a horrible game. Full stop. It is unacceptable that that game was released. It is a fucking train wreck. The game does not run, and when the game does run, there's nothing interesting in it. If you're gonna say, yeah, but there's Pokemon to catch, brother, raise the standards. Play Monster Hunter Stories 2. Play anything else. I think Game Freak can make a lot better. I think the Pokemon Company can stand to give Game Freak the chance to do a lot better. And for the top grossing franchise in the world, I would expect a whole hell of a lot better. It's pretty much all I had to say on the Pokemon series itself, you know, but I just wanted to take a moment to mention a game because I know a lot of people have probably already typed it on their keyboards. Palworld. Now, Palworld is a game that does almost everything that I've mentioned and a whole lot more. They've added in settlement building and some survival elements. You know, I believe that you can assign your pals to build like land sites and stuff. I haven't played much of Palworld. I watched a friend play it. It looks very fun. I gotta say, I don't know if that's the direction I would take Pokemon in terms of beating up the Pokemon directly. I don't know. I think as much as people may find it goofy sometimes that, you know, the Pokemon games have like a 10-year-old kid saving the day from a mafia organization with just monsters. You know, why don't they just shoot Red in Pokemon Red when he takes down Giovanni? I don't know, but you know, shooting a gun, if I had to shoot a Bidoof in the face, I think I'd feel weird about that. You know, even hitting it with a stick, I don't know if I'd do that. But, you know, I don't think Power World's wrong for doing that. You know, I think Power World does a lot of things that a lot of people have wanted to see from the Pokemon franchise. And that's why I think it's especially so pathetic that they're under lawsuit right now from the company that can't make a fucking game. You know, maybe you wouldn't have competition. Maybe you wouldn't have so many people flocking to a new series if you could make a fucking game that people want. But you can't. So, you know, and Power World, you know, I'm sorry. Usually I try to be, you know, up to snuff on my logic of these games when I make a video on it. I just wanted to mention it. It seems great. You know, from what I played, I had a great time. I didn't snipe any Pokemon in the face, but you know, it was fun. I might play some more, but yeah, I just was pretty angry about this one. You know, I've been so into Pokemon lately, and it's just it's so angry. It's so bothersome, man, that they just can't make a game that is competent. You know, I don't know. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. If you guys have any thoughts on Pokemon, you know, let me know. If you hate me for this video, go right ahead, man. You know, I've been a Pokemon fan since the beginning, so you're not telling me anything I don't know. But anyway, I want the best of video games. I want video games to be as good as they can be, damn it. And I don't think Pokemon's in that mark, but I really would like it to be. I'd love it to be. I want to love Pokemon games the same way that I used to love Heart Gold and Soul Silver. I just made my hair crazy. All right. Later, guys. That's it from me. Bye.